So I traveled to Eastern Washington University yesterday on behalf of Sravasti Abbey to speak to the freshman world religion class and to the Women's and Gender Studies department. One was a public talk, the Women and Gender Studies was a public talk, and then the class was just the kids asking Q&A about, they were doing Buddhism in the class. So that was a lot of fun. They had a lot of wonderful questions. And they sort of summarized, because I turned around and started asking them some questions, and I asked them why they chose world religion when they had a number of other opportunities to take different subjects. And the general consensus is that they really felt that they were totally uneducated about the many spiritual traditions, and that because of that, they never understood when they heard about different religious communities doing certain things, and they wanted to get a better understanding of the spiritual traditions, the values, the philosophical views of the different religions, and that they said it was very helpful to open up their minds, expand their minds, and to increase their appreciation for those traditions. And they said it was also very helpful to sort of be able to put themselves in other people's shoes, especially as other spiritual religions immigrate to this country, and some of the difficulties and the biases and the prejudices that they experience. So they all felt it was really a wonderful class. And then the public talk the topic was, what did the Buddha teach, and what does that matter today, or how does it matter today? And so I was trying to put it in the context, of course, there are so many, I think all of Buddhist teachings are relevant today, but I had to kind of narrow it down. So, but then we had our elections the other day, and generally speaking, it was, for some of us, a little bit discouraging. So there was quite a bit of discouragement in the group, a little bit of skepticism and cynicism about some of the results of the elections. So, so what I basically shared with them is what's relevant today is, first of all, and I spent a lot of time on this, is that when we look at our political situation, our global situation, all the strife in the world, and when we get angry and very frustrated with the results of what we're seeing, is that it's very important to make sure that we turn our minds back to our own lives, and that the practice of ethics is first and foremost within our own lives, and that we need to check and make sure what our ethical discipline is like, you know, as far as stealing and harsh speech and divisive speech. I mean, there were, you know, do we do any of our own mudslinging and backbiting and finger pointing and blaming and things, you know, such negativities? Because we can't affect positive change with minds that are outraged and angry and blaming other people for the condition of the world if we ourselves haven't cleaned up our own minds and our own inner landscape. So I spent quite a bit of time with that. And then I moved into one of the ways to sort of then, you know, as part of the practice, is to soften up our relationship to other sentient beings, particularly the ones that we feel are harming us in the world, is to look at the kindness of others, the interdependency of all beings, human and non-human, and to look at the kindness of all the beings that provide us with our necessities, our possessions, our skills, our talents, the stuff that we have, all of our expertise, and to just really get a sense of how interconnected and how interrelated we are. And that those people in the world who give us the most difficulty and really make us feel discouraged and frightened and see a lot of injustice, is that we see them as some of our greatest teachers, because they help us to cultivate patience and compassion, because just like us just like us in many confused ways and confused times, they're wanting to be happy and not suffer. And then finally, so the ethics then interface with the interconnectedness of all beings. And then the third one is for all of us to cultivate love and compassion. And that compassion is the wish for all beings, friend, enemy, and stranger, wherever we put them in a category on any given day, just like us, want to be happy and not suffer. And that compassion doesn't have an agenda. It is not interested in product, goal, or outcome, or expectation. It is a spiritual lifetime's process of simply wishing to benefit as best as we can in order to alleviate the suffering of others. And so it's a very long-term view and vision of how to practice, because if we look at the state of the world, sometimes it's very discouraging and we fall into personal distress, which compassion, which is wishing to help alleviate the suffering and the causes of suffering of others, we end up having that energy come back to us, and it becomes a very sort of self-preoccupied sense of overwhelmed and what can I do, and it's hopeless and things like that. So if we have a very short-term view and we don't look at that we may not see the changes within our lifetime, then the personal distress arises because it looks like we're trying too hard and nothing seems to be happening. Or if we turn the view to a very long-term view without a result, without a product, and without any expectation of where our compassionate actions are going to end, then the personal distress, it's a little bit more difficult for it to arise. And then lastly, this is something that I have just felt in the past year from the people who have come to the Abbey in growing numbers to do retreat, to work on their minds, to try to find skills to make life Dharma practice. And also going to the university yesterday and the meditation classes that we've been having, is that although the big picture and the powers that be right now seem to be kind of off the wall and irregardless or indifferent to the people that they're representing. Like there's this whole reality going on there that's kind of crazy and misguided and distorted and greedy and wild. But down at the bottom, on the sidewalk and in the neighborhoods, I am incredibly encouraged by the sincerity of the people who are asking these very deep questions, saying, I know that the way that I behave in the world affects other people. And I really want to have tools to change my mind, to make different choices, to be able to meet the challenges in my life with a lot more wisdom, a lot more skill, a lot more forgiveness. And they're really so sincerely interested. And we can see how they're integrating it into their lives, and they come back to the classes and come back to the Abbey and say, I tried the practice, I tried the meditation, and I can see how much it's helping me. It's really changed my relationship to my father, to my in-laws, to my boss. I still got fired, but I was able to take the whole experience as part of my practice. So despite what's going on in the world view, which can be very discouraging, I'm incredibly inspired by what the grassroots, common people of the country and the world are doing. There is some sincere thought transformation going on. And I would have to, my aspiration is that is going to start, moving upward. I think the grassroots is going to start moving in a very positive way. And it's noticeable enough for me to really want to say that to everybody this morning, is that I'm incredibly inspired and humbled by the efforts of those everyday folks that will affect positive change, because they are really transforming their minds.